Let me begin by acknowledging that the land on which we meet today is the traditional lands for the Ghana people, and I pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Thanks to the University of South Australia, Erasmus Plus Center of Excellence, Jean Monnet Center, especially to Professor Anthony Elliott, send him my regards, please, and Louis Everas. Thanks also to Matt Williams, the German Honorary Consul, who connects South Australia with Germany and Europe, and for whose advice I'm always grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to be here today and to discuss the evolving partnership between Germany, Europe, and Australia. And our nations share deep-rooted values, strong democratic institutions, and a commitment to addressing global challenges through collaboration. And I want to talk today about the common challenges and the shared solutions from a German and European perspective, and in view of the potential of collaborating with Australia. But nevertheless, I think some remarks on the current situation in Germany might be of interest for you. And therefore, I would like to start with the election for the federal parliament only 11 days ago, and then I would move on to the Australian-German relationship and the potential to benefit even more from one another. And thirdly, and finally, I would take a look at the broader picture and how Australia and Germany, benefiting from its membership in the EU, can tackle global challenges together. So if that's all right for you, I would start. So starting by the current situation in Germany. Germany held its federal elections for the Bundestag on the 23rd of February, and the conservative Christian Democrats got 28%, the most votes, and they won, but they need to find a partner in order to form a majority. And the extreme right party, the AfD, Alternative for Germany, for Deutschland, doubled its votes to 20%, but will not be able to be part of the government. They are ready for that, but the other parties are not. Friedrich Merz from the CDU-CSU, the Conservatives, is conducting right now exploratory talks with the Social Democrats to form a government by Easter, which is rather, in our system, quite an ambitious time frame. Until then, the current government under the Social Democrat Olaf Scholz and the Greens remains in a caretaker role. The transition is moving smoothly as regards, let's say, the peaceful transition of power, which is normally self-explanatory, but in our times, not everywhere this is possible. So I can reassure you the transition will be smooth. And now, but also it's in the urgency due to the tense international situation. But luckily, in Germany, traditionally, foreign policy main lines are not under dispute between the main parties. So there is a continuity to be expected. And what are the main lines of the German foreign policy? I would mention three, starting by Europe. Not surprisingly in this context here, Europe is in our DNA as a founding member of the European Economic Community already in 1957, 70 years ago. And Germany has always been an advocate for advancing European integration. And also, the close partnership with the US remains essential, with a clearer focus on Europe's own responsibilities and capacity to act. So in German, you would say the Eigenverantwortung of Europe and its Handlungsfähigkeit. I assume some of you speak German or understand German, so I put in some words that are known to all of us. Second point, 3 years since Russia's war and aggression against Ukraine, of course, Ukraine is a point of continuity. Today, we are 10 days after the 24th of February, which marked the third anniversary of Russia's invasion to Ukraine, and the suffering caused by this war is immeasurable. Germany has provided nearly 44 billion euro in various ways to support and accepted over 1 million Ukrainian refugees in bilateral support, second only to the United States. Military support, including equipment and weapons, has helped Ukraine to defend its sovereignty. And the common objective is to maintain the sovereign independence of Ukraine. This war should end as soon as possible, but with the inclusion of Ukraine into the negotiations. A just and sustainable peace cannot be dictated. That would only play into Russia's hands. Europe will support Ukraine as long as it takes. And we are glad that also the Australian government recently, some days ago, Vice Premier Miles also stated that. Third, a continuous item is Germany's historical responsibility. And Germany remains unwavering in its commitment to remembering the Holocaust and fighting anti-Semitism in all its forms. Since the horrific Hamas attack in Israel on the 7th of October, we have seen a disturbing rise in anti-Semitic incidents. And the government is resolute that Jewish life in Germany is to be protected and supported. At the same time, we recognize the importance of standing against all forms of hatred, including Islamophobia, racism, and homophobia. Freedom of expression is a fundamental right, but hate speech and the denial of Israel's right to exist are unacceptable. At the same time, we remain deeply concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and significantly increase humanitarian assistance to alleviate suffering. So this was about Germany and the continuity, the main lines. I would now move to the second part, which is Germany and Australia. I would describe it as a solid foundation and a strong bilateral relationship. Germany and Australia share a robust and multifaceted bilateral relationship driven by shared values and mutual strategic interests. It's always called like-minded partners. So I think that's the right expression for that. I want to mention some areas that are now of crucial importance in a new phase of dynamism that we have in our relation, and that has deepened our cooperation across some sectors. So the sectors I would like to mention is defense, first and foremost, which has not been so much in the foreground in the last years, but has increased in importance. We have seen unprecedented participation of the Bundeswehr, the German armed forces, especially in joint military exercises such as Pitch Black and Talisman Sabre, as well as industrial partnerships. Now a little bit of advertisement. Germany-built vessels are ready to enhance Australia's naval capabilities, while Australian-made armored vehicles, it's called the Boxer vehicles, it's heavy armored vehicles, built in Brisbane by Rheinmetall, are soon to be integrated within the German army. These collaborations underscore our shared commitment to global security and strategic stability. Second part that shows this dynamism in our relations is the high-level visits that have intensified. I just mentioned Prime Minister Albanese, who met the German counterpart Olaf Scholz in Berlin in July 2023. And the Australian ministers continue to prioritize Germany as a strategic destination in Europe. I have to admit, a little less than they travel to Paris and London, but nevertheless, they also come to us. German ministers and business delegations are visiting Australia more frequently. And the Australian states, including this state here, South Australia, have strengthened or are planning to strengthen their presence in Germany, promoting trade, research, and industry. And in September last year, Premier Peter Malinauskas announced the plan to opening a South Australia Trade and Investment Office in Frankfurt. Good choice, I would say, as South Australia is the 8th largest trading partner. No, other way around. Germany is the 8th largest trading partner to South Australia, with a bilateral trade volume of 622 million euros and 67 German companies with a physical presence here in South Australia. The next part I would like to mention is economy as a whole. From a German perspective, Australia's continued economic growth and stability provide a stable foundation for bilateral trade, making it very attractive for German businesses. And that is also part of my role to make this happen, to bring these things together and foster the relationships in economic terms. Australia is also very interesting because of its proximity to the Asia-Pacific region, especially South and Southeast Asia. There's also a great potential here. Summing it up, Germany is Australia's largest EU trading partner with a trade volume two ways of 16.8 billion euros. And in total, 760 German companies operate in Australia, creating about 100,000 jobs. The last point I want to mention when it comes to the relationship of Germany and Australia is culture, and I make it especially here in Adelaide, because here in Adelaide, last year the visit of Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock took place, and it was in the beginning of May that she had extensive foreign policy consultations with Foreign Minister Penny Wong. And a very emotional part of the program that the two foreign ministers jointly conducted was the return of artifacts from the German Grassi Museum in Leipzig to elders here of the Ghana people in Adelaide Park. It was a bark peeler, a club, a spear, and a fishing net. And they found their way back on country and are now on public display at the Art Gallery of South Australia, where they are waiting, I think, for the moment that they will move to a permanent destination that the Aboriginals will jointly with the government decide on. And this is, for me, an area of closer cooperation also on the return of human remains. So that's the status quo, the new dynamism. And of course, in our times, we face also common challenges. And what are these common challenges? I would like to mention, first of all, the labor and skill shortages. Germany and Australia struggle both with skilled labor shortages, particularly in healthcare, engineering, and also in the technology sectors. And both of our countries know that it's an enormous task to invest in workforce training. So, second point where we have common challenges is the just transitions. Our both countries are transitioning away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy, aiming to decarbonize heavy industries. In Germany, we are phasing out coal and nuclear power with expanding solar and wind energy. Australia is a lucky country. Solar, wind is different as in Germany. The country is large. The sun is intensive, wind is intensive. So that is something that Australia has to offer. But also Australia is moving away from a dig and ship economy while maintaining the energy security and affordability. And I see there a great opportunity to exchange our experiences. And an example is, for instance, the traditional coal and steel regions that are transitioning to future industries. But in that respect, we face also the challenge of social issues. It is that the motto that Germany has is leave no one behind. So there are a lot of concerns about the situation, and the people that are working in the coal mines not necessarily are the same who will operate the IT and AI systems. So that is something where I think there's a lot of communality to discuss. When we talk about the common challenges, it's also about the search for solutions. And I think that is also something where there's a good potential for our two countries. So Australia, the Prime Minister says it again and again, is to become a renewable energy superpower. And that aligns with Germany's need for sustainable energy imports. So we are working closely on Australia's energy transition, including through a 400 million euro H2 Global bilateral auction window. German companies stand ready to provide technologies and import products from Australia to diversify our supply chain, especially also in critical minerals. So that was one sector. Next sector I want to mention is the healthcare sector that also offers promising opportunities for pharmaceuticals and medical technology, as well as research. I just want to mention, and we are very proud of it, the planned investment of BioNTech, a company of Germany from Mainz, not far away from my hometown, to establish a vaccine production facility, not in South Australia yet, but in Victoria. That underscores, in my view, the potential for deeper cooperation in the sciences and biotech innovation. Joint solutions where we have something to offer is also the environmental protection, particularly in the circular economy and waste management. Germany can contribute significantly to Australia's sustainability efforts. The companies can play a vital role in advancing recycling technologies, not here only, but also in the Pacific Island countries. Third point, infrastructure development is another field where we can contribute and do something together, particularly in the specialized construction such as tunnel engineering and large-scale infrastructure projects such as, hopefully, the 2032 Brisbane Olympic Games. So that is bilateral, and then the part, and then looking at the broader picture, about Germany, Europe, we are at the Jean Monnet Center, and Australia and their strategic partnerships. The base is solid, but we have to face changing circumstances. Germany, European Union, and Australia have deepened their cooperation through some legal acts. And as I'm a lawyer, I like to talk about those, but not too long. So it's the bilateral enhanced strategic partnership, bilateral one, German-Australia, and the framework agreement between the EU and Australia from 2022. And that shows that the collaboration rests on a solid basis, but we see, when you look at the TV, read the newspaper, you see that the solid foundations are at least questioned if this is still the right fit for the time to come and for the actual situation and the future. So we witness that yesterday's certainties are today's past, and this disruption seems to be the motto of the moment. In Chinese language, the word for crisis includes the character for chance. And I would like to look at the current situation also in that way. Not only the crisis part, not only the difficulties, but also what can be done and what can be better in the future. These challenges, first of all, cannot be mastered alone. And I think we also have to find the way as we move forward carefully. And Xiaoping had said, moving over the river while touching the stones. And I think that's also a bit part of it. But we also are lucky that we have paths that are existing, that have been serving us all very well over the last decennia, and that is helping us to promote stability and prosperity. And that's the international rules-based order and the UN Charter. Now, as we find ourselves in a new geopolitical landscape where the competing visions of the world order are leading to a more transactional approach to global affairs, it's clear that Europe and also many countries have to change to thrive in this new reality. I think all countries have to position themselves and, of course, to work together. So where are these areas of working together and where are the crucial areas? Once again, it's defense and security. And in the past, Europe has has risen to the challenges and reforming again. I said BioNTech, vaccines for COVID, and the continuous support of Ukraine, and also the recently stepping up on defense. I think these are points where you say, in short notice, things have happened and worked together well. So this joint European approach would also strengthen the transatlantic community. And Chancellor Scholz put it at the Munich Security Conference in February. Defending freedom and democracy against its enemies ties also the transatlantic alliance together. A significant increase in EU defense spending and the resulting capabilities would relieve the US and thus the transatlantic alliance as a whole. And here in this region, it becomes clear, in my view, that the strategic theaters, transatlantic, Ukraine, Europe, but also Asia, Taiwan, Pacific, cannot be separate anymore. And therefore, in the Indo-Pacific region, Germany is engaged. It is expanding its strategic engagement through participation in multinational military exercises like Pitch Black, which is Air Force and Pacific Skies last year in Darwin, and soon Talisman Sabre, which is Army in the eastern part of Australia, reinforcing the commitment to regional stability and the rules-based international order. Second part, after defense, trade and economic growth. The EU Commission President von der Leyen recently reaffirmed in the global summit in Davos that the EU remains open for business and that tariff wars, punitive tariffs, make no sense and would eventually lead to a global race to the bottom. Rules-based trade is a win-win game. And for countries like Germany, that is not a world power, this is essential. So what could and should be done in order also for Australia to profit from a rules-based order and trade? We remain hopeful that the EU and Australia will resume negotiations on an Australia-EU free trade agreement after your elections. An FTA will grant Australian businesses access to a vast market of 446 million consumers and an economy worth 17 trillion, which is Australian $28 trillion. It would open new export opportunities while also allowing Australian businesses to benefit from cheaper goods and services from EU suppliers. And the agreement would also improve market access for Australian service providers in key sectors like education, financial and professional services. The third area I would like to mention is energy and climate action. And I learned as an envoy for the Pacific Island states, 2022 to 2023, that climate change is the biggest security threat to the Pacific Island states. And Pacific Island leaders are mentioning again and again. Germany and many other EU members stand side by side with the Pacific Island states in this global challenge. And therefore, we also strongly support Australia's bid to host COP31 in partnership with the Pacific. The Pacific Island states have contributed minimal to global emissions, but experience the strongest impact from climate change. Germany and Europe will also continue their path towards climate neutrality outlined by the Green New Deal of the EU. The Commission is currently considering an ambitious nationally determined contribution, NDC, of 90% emission reduction by 2040. And on top of that, the new Green Deal industrial plan, just announced by the Commission President, enhances the competitiveness of European manufacturing capacity for the net zero technologies and is accelerating the transition to climate neutrality. To do all this, also to advance in the energy and climate action, we need also joint research and progress in science and innovation. So for every technological advancement, international research collaboration is crucial. And we are lucky that with several hundred research corporations in place between our universities and institutions, both our countries, Germany and Australia, are well positioned. And let me add a well-known European wish at that moment. That is that the next logical step would be an Australian participation in EU Horizon Europe, which is, it would be mutually beneficial. It would thrive innovation in fields such as AI, space technology, and quantum computing. It's not terribly expensive. They could come as an observer. It's just a decision that we see. For us, it's logical and no doubt about that. Okay, Let me come to the end, summing it all up. So Germany, Europe, and Australia are natural partners. Whether through strengthening regional security, advancing clean energy, fostering research cooperation, or expanding and diversifying our trade, the collaboration is essential. And it is built on a foundation of trust, a strategic alignment, and the recognition that we stand to benefit from closer cooperation in an area of unknown geopolitical uncertainty. And as we look ahead, we must ask ourselves, how can we deepen our cooperation further? What more can we do to tackle climate change, defend democracy, and promote global stability with the determination and unity? I look forward to your solution to these questions and look forward to our discussion. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much for such a wide-ranging and powerful lecture. That was absolutely fantastic. We now have a good half an hour for discussion and questions. And there should be a mic floating around somewhere up the back here. Fantastic. So who would like to kick us off with a question for the Ambassador? Yes, right down the middle here.
Thank you. It's a political question. How united is the EU in respect of Ukraine at present? I read in the press different formulations of what's going on.
Yes, certainly the invasion of Ukraine by the by Russia was let's say a crucial moment in the history after the Second World War. Never before after the Second World War a country was invaded in such a brutal way. The European Union is also, and other countries are quite united when you look at all the resolutions in the UN that have been adopted with an enormous majority of over 100 countries that condemn the use of force entering, invading a country. So this, in that respect, the fundamental principle is unified, but of course the question of how to move ahead and what's the future is seen differently. What is the strategy? What is coming next to supporting Ukraine with weapons? But seeing that, let's say, in course of the 3 years, it was not able for the Ukrainians to win so far. So the question is how to move forward. I think the common line is that in Europe, we have learned after the Second World War, it should not be decided above the heads of the countries. So they have to be included in a solution. So therefore, Europe was fighting very hard that in these current negotiations that take place, Ukraine also finds its place. And of course, also the question is how Ukraine can be secured, and his sovereignty, I talked about the independent sovereignty, can be secured over the next decennia. They have to be strengthened. Their military has to be strong enough to prevent further attacks. And so this, and therefore the membership of the European Union is also of great importance, which would also support them economically, making them better equipped for the challenges ahead. So that is, but of course, not an easy answer. Thanks for starting with that one.
Down here.
Ambassador, thank you for your presentation. Both of Australia and Germany might be considered to have something in common in as much as we have a relatively aging population. And both of us rely quite extensively on migration to fulfill our skills. And we have the richness of living in Asia, and we have what we like to think is a stable and valued multicultural community in Australia. Germany is also home now to numbers of peoples from around the world, particularly growing numbers of migrants and refugees. What similarities do you think, or differences, might exist in the experiences of Australia and of Germany in assimilating new peoples from new countries?
I knew when you talked about my past and mentioned migration, I thought that will trigger questions. Okay. No. First of all, Australia is an island. It's a continent, it's an island. Germany has 9 neighboring countries with land borders. So the question of securing and controlling the influx is quite challenging. Australia is, as far as I have read it, is by history a country of immigrants. We have 1 million German people with German background here in Australia still. And so that's in your DNA. And the task of integrating them into the society in a, let's say, pioneering country, that is something that was, I think, crucial for you to succeed in this country. Whereas in Germany, we were confronted with some waves of immigration, not the least after the Second World War, when a lot of the eastern parts of Germany were lost and they were integrated into Germany. Now we are facing a huge number also of refugees after Syria, 2015, where the Chancellor Merkel also decided to, as she said, wir schaffen das, to integrate them and to show a human face to the world. So that's to say, the control, the management of influx is here in Australia easier than, let's say, in Germany. Here in Australia, I think we can learn from you. We can learn from you about how to integrate different nations, different groups of people, and to show them that they can stay Pakistani origin or Philippine or British, whatever, but also be Australians. I think that is something where we still have to learn more here in Germany. In Germany, how to do this better. We have 7 million, I think 7 million people of Turkish origin in their family history, and many of those don't feel that they are appreciated, so that they would, that it's also a question, how can they as Muslims also, let's say, practice their faith and be as good Germans as anyone else. So this is something that is a bottom-up thing and a top-down. Bottom-up is that everyone in his own community can have a look, what can I do to integrate and to work together and to live together, but also top-down to make clear that these people are Germans as everyone else, and that we also, in a way, have to change over the years, and that's not the norm, that the ones that have been born in Germany and over generations in Germany, that this is the norm and the others have just to assimilate. So we can learn a lot from Australia. There are differences in the treatment of illegal migrants. Australia has chosen a quite restrictive path. That's not for me to comment on, but let's say, in our view, it's we should, the idea of processing and not only processing but also hosting asylum seekers that have been accepted outside of the country is something that is, let's say, not the norm with us. So, but I think there's a lot of discussion on that here, and things have changed. And but I think in any case, migration is an issue where we can discuss on integrating the regular ones and also managing, controlling illegal influxes.
Thanks, Ambassador, for your presentation. I'm interested in your observations on what I would frame is the success of the way that German political parties are partners in government over decades. So, if I could contrast it with the Australian political system, where it's either the coalition, as in the Liberal coalition on the right, or the Labor on the left, and they would never work together. They will always be opponents, and it'll either be one or the other for Australian governments. Whereas, what I think is unique about the German governments, you have the left and the SPD, the Whirring government, working now potentially again as a government partner with the CDU, and previously, as you know, it's been and so there's that partnership arrangement that's quite unique to Germany, that the big parties work together. So what are your observations on how that's worked, and because it's obviously been a successful model and quite unique?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the government that's going to be formed now was before called the Grand Coalition. So with Merkel, I think twice for 8 years they were together, and so I would call them the mainstream parties. And let's say maybe before they were more the SPD more to the left, the CDU more to the right. Merkel moved, as it said, a bit more to the center. So there is the center. That is where the idea was: victories are won, elections are won in the center. So then there's the discussion: if everyone moves to the center, does this not naturally also strengthen the extremes? So there are people that say, because there was such a great coalition, the right and the left were strengthened. I don't know. I would rather say that in that geopolitical landscape that we were talking about, and the enormous changes that we are all living, that brings concerns, fears of, let's say, of not advancing anymore, fears of material loss. That also looks for certainty, easy solutions, and the ones that say, well, that's an easy solution. If only we didn't have any migration, and if we just would be on our own, everything would be fine. So I think that this is at that moment also the reason why the extremes are a bit strengthened. So this election also was a good sign, because on the one hand, we have 28% for the CDU, we have 16% for the SPD, and of course, we have 20% for the right wing, for the nationalists, but it was not possible to really destabilize our democracy. And I mean, for me, since 1988, I'm the foreign ministry. I wouldn't have thought that I would have to be in a situation where I explain, well, after the election in Germany, everything is stable, democracy is stable, everything's fine. I mean, this is something that shows also the amount of uncertainty we are all living in. I think that the responsibility that the big parties took in Germany, the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats, I think that is something we have to build on. We have to keep it and see that the middle is strong enough to also maneuver now in these difficult times. The Liberals, they were a strong party, they were a decisive party. They were in power for many years, but they lost. So it was very slim, the majority, but they are lost. So we still have the left with 2 left parties, and we have the right with a strong one. So there is no recipe of success for that, but I mean, It's, as someone has said, like with the European integration, it's also with party politics and governance of a country. It's like a bicycle, you have to pedal, otherwise it will fall to one or the other side. So we are in that moment now that the government has to provide stability and has to maneuver now in a situation where the United States and the president has decided to put questions and things into question that were not questioned before. The question of the nuclear support, the nuclear umbrella in Europe, the American troops in Europe, all that is something where we have to think about and discuss, which was not an issue only some weeks ago.
Thank you, Ambassador. Just to follow on from your statements you just made, it's one thing to say that we have to talk about and we have to think about, but one thing that Europe has to do in order to help Ukraine is to do something. If the Americans withdraw their support, if the Americans withdraw their troops, somebody or something has to replace them. How quickly can Europe move?
Yes, I mean, there is, after this clash that happened in the United States and the positioning of the United States, I mean, very quick, Europe, and I say enlarged Europe with Great Britain, moved quickly. Prime Minister Starmer, Macron invited to the summit, impromptu summit in London. We have today, as we speak, it's the extraordinary European summit in Brussels taking place, all to assess the situation commonly, which is already a good thing, but also to say that the support of Ukraine is continuing. And as I said, German Chancellor has said, as long as it takes. The Australian Miles, I read it in the newspaper today, also mentioned that as long as it takes, Australia would support. Support means military equipment, financial support, but also looking at the future, looking how this independent sovereignty of Ukraine can be secured also in peacetime. That means the army has to be strong enough to deter further attacks. Other countries have to send peace troops. All these questions are now discussed, and I had the impression, it's also banal, but it's like that Europe is at its best when it's under pressure. And so I think, unfortunately, we are under pressure in that, but I'm quite confident and optimistic that we, as countries together with the UK, will be able also to find solutions. What else would you have expected from me?
Thank you, Ambassador. I was wondering, are there concrete talks about defensive cooperation between Australia and Europe in regards to now the US said basically Russia can keep Ukraine, they want to annex Greenland, perhaps Canada. If they also go as far, then seeing here the Chinese increasing their presence around Australia to eventually say, okay, China, we don't interfere with Taiwan. Russia, you can take as much as you want. We take Greenland and Canada. How Australia and Europe would work together in a then concrete three-front situation?
Australia, of course, knows best how to maneuver in this region, how to negotiate. And I mean, the current government has been very active already after the transition or after the victory of President Trump. Minister Wong traveled to US, Minister Miles was there. And I mean, Australia, as far as I see it, is counting very much on the existing cooperation, on the ties that are very, very close. I'm just talking about AUKUS. That's the biggest link that there is. And so being together in such a contract, but not only buying, but also training and all that. So the network, the interaction is strong. I think that from the outside is the strategy of the Australian government. And at the same time, they are also reaching out to other countries and seeking support. In that sense, I wouldn't mention here the defense. I mentioned another example, the plan of the US to withdraw or to freeze USAID is very problematic in some areas of the Pacific, which means that the Australians also say, okay, we have to continue to support and look for means that together with others we can provide the support that is now frozen. So I would say that from the Australian point of view, they see their close link to the US, a special relationship where they manage in that relationship, but also look to strengthen the ties that they have. And in that respect, we are also with a little part of that strengthening network that Australia now does.
Thank you, Ambassador. You mentioned the partnership between Australia and Germany in the hydrogen space. Do you think it's realistic to think one day we might be exporting hydrogen to Germany, or are the objectives of the partnership more about exchange of knowledge and the support for German companies to get a foothold in Australia and help with our transition?
Well, the goal is, as I said, that Australia, I said also the lucky country, Australia has it all, has every raw material you can think of, has the natural sources. And when some years ago, the Australian ambassador in Germany said shipping sunshine, that was an area some years ago of tremendous optimism. And I think that generally speaking, now there is a little bit of realism taking place. That means it's not that easy. You have to produce it, to transform it with technologies, and to transport it. You need the harbors, the ports that have to have the facilities. So some realistic perspective. Some companies also in Australia that were more optimistic have also reduced their engagement. What the German companies could do more is that to rethink their traditional model. When you look at the car, for instance, at the car producers, they are not seeing themselves as investing into critical minerals to get it out of the earth and to process it. They are buyers. But here in Australia, given the enormous amount of money needed also to take some critical minerals out of the earth, the need and the necessity is to have common investment. At that stage, the German companies are not, or not the German companies only, but there is hesitation to pay that green premium as long as other producers sell it more cheaply. So the other Asian countries seem, due to their different business model, economic model, seem to be more ready to go into investment in Australia. So our hope, our wish is that also European or German companies might go a bit along the value chain and invest here. And a flagship project, some flagship projects would be good so that you can see it's working. It's a good investment. That's for critical minerals. And with hydrogen, it's a problem about the price. So therefore, everyone was waiting to start investing when you don't know how much you get in the end. So therefore, this H2 Global that I mentioned, this auction window, that's an innovative move that should help. That's a start. It's not a solution. Yeah, but climate is not something that will go away. The climate crisis, it will stay with us. We feel it ever more. And I think that therefore it's also so important that Australia takes over that it would be possible for it to get this COP31 that it would come here. A lot of discussion would be here, a lot of dynamism would come. So hopefully it's possible that they get that.
Thank you again, Ambassador. Ambassador, if you were in a room with the ministers for education and research of both Germany and Australia, and you were thinking about young people, researchers, people, arts and culture, and our linkages between our two countries, what would you say to the two ministers to say, here is our good relations now, but this is what we could really envisage for the future if you did this?
In the education field, you mean? Yeah. I think there is a potential in the student exchange. I think that that also Germany has universities that increasingly teach in English, that there is an advantage also for, let's say, Australian students, at least for a period of time, to have part of their educational biography in Germany, as it has the advantage of being without fees. So someone told me I shouldn't say that because it's not about money at all, but it's about quality. So it's not only that it's for free, but it's also high world-class education. So that is something that I think should be fostered. I heard that the Australian students, given that there is a continent, probably don't look so much to Central Europe, stay here or go to UK or go to US. I think that is a potential that can be developed. Then, yeah, I mean, that's also banal, the tyranny of distance. We have in our embassy also students, interns, but imagine that it's 18,000 kilometers. The price of flights is quite expensive. The cost of living is also not very cheap here. So that is something where, let's say, from some support might be helpful. Stipends for exchange would be necessary, at least to step up. But that is also something that in the German system, as it's very state-driven, given the budgetary situation, I wouldn't be too enthusiastic that this is going to be a big boost now. Australia, with your different system, with the fees and with universities that are quite wealthy, if that's true, that this would be also a possibility to support from the university side that exchange with Europe. No?
At the EU level, you mentioned Horizon Europe during your talk, which is a program that it feels tantalizingly close, but not quite something that is easy for an Australian researcher or research team to be involved in. And you said that's something that potentially could change and potentially maybe even will change. Is that something you see happening? Horizon Europe being open for Australian research teams to be involved in a way where funds can flow here more easily for research engagement?
Yes, I mean, it's open. It's a question of the Australian government to participate. It could start by being an observer below the whole membership. And so this is something that apparently from my point of view is not very costly. And so this would be something that opens tremendous possibilities, not just money-wise, but also the network, the cooperation. So that is something that we keep pushing, but that's also, I would say, that for the Australian side, the cooperation with a strange animal like the EU is not a given. So that is bilateral sphere is easier to be understood. European Union, 27 member states, not a government, not a state, but something sui generis is something that maybe has to be explained, and therefore it's so good that you have this center here and also invite European ambassadors to explain a little bit. So I think you have to show the advantages of the EU, to make propaganda, as they would say in Russia, for it, and then to really end from the universities and the Australian public and interested groups, put pressure on the government also if you think it's useful to have it.
Well, we've just hit the end of our time period, and that seems like a pretty nice moment to finish on as well. So I'd like everyone to join me once again in thanking the Ambassador for a wonderful lecture and engagement tonight.
Thank you.